Test 1, 2. Lori.
My call to order this meeting of the Bibb County Board of Education for Thursday, August 20, 2026. Board members could have a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Dr. Woodford, second by Mr. Freeman. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the word aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. There is none. The agenda is approved unanimously. So today we have a finance work session. The first item is a millage rate presentation with Mr. Bush. Or do you want to say something first, Dr. Sanders? I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, sir.
No, that's fine, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. The only thing I want to make sure is that you're acclimated to the items that we have put before you. If you look, first we have the agenda that you've already approved, followed by the tentative millage rate adoption presentation. Following that, we have two action memos based on our discussion and our recommendation as a district. Following that are both sets of information regarding the moderate risk designation overview and action item, in addition to the TAN information. Just want to make sure you understood what was in that first packet. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Let me clarify one thing. Are we doing the actions in this meeting or the
No.
meeting, 4 o'clock meeting?
4 o'clock.
Okay. Good afternoon, Board President Morton, board members, Superintendent Dr. Sims. We present today an overview of the final tax digest, accompanied by worksheets designed to aid the adoption of a tentative millage rate. We'll begin by reviewing some of the information regarding the value of a mill. The tax digest reported a net value of $6.972 billion. A mill equals 1/1000th of a dollar, which results in a mill being worth $6,972,000 and $72,015. When a change in the value of a mill occurs, the equivalent mill also changes. This year, that equivalent mill equaled 1.252 mills, which would make our effective rollback rate 13.422, a reduction from the current rate of 14.674. As mentioned before, the 2026 digest reported a net value of $6.972 million, up $762 million from the previous year. This represents a 12.3% increase in the digest. It can also be relevant to note how the tax base is divided in our community, where residential property makes up 49.45%, commercial property 34.7%, industrial 9.14%, and utilities 4.21%. The next chart, slide 10, shows a history of our tax collections, digest values, and a couple other informative facts about our collections through calendar year 2021 through 2025, and estimates what 2026 may look like. And I'll remind you, the calendar year 2026 is our fiscal year 27, which we're currently in, but those taxes are collected in 2026. You can see that between the periods of 2022 to 2026, our property tax collections only increased approximately $9 million, or around 13%. Maintaining the millage rate this year does represent around a 12% increase, and that would increase those revenues to $97.7 million. The bottom part of this chart shows our other tax revenues, where the main part of these are collected through the sale of automobiles and that TAVT tax, and the pilot payments, which is payments in lieu of taxes, which are extended to industries entering our community. Moving on to slide 12. We're looking at, this is a baseline chart about how we derive our net tax revenue. So we start at the top with the tax value. That's the tax digest value. We reduce that to the millage rate, or the millage value of 1 mill. Multiply that by the full rollback rate in the far left column. What it would do if we maintain the rate, and then several options increasing those millage rates to the right. We take out a 2.5% collection fee that the tax assessors take for doing their service, and also remove a 2% estimated uncollectible value, which gets us down to the bottom at our net estimated property tax revenue for each option. Slide 13 reviews our current year budget and the impact maintaining the millage rate will have for our district. In this example, this is a maintaining the millage rate at 14.674%, which would yield a change of approximately $6.3 million in revenue. And that would effectively decrease our current deficit from $16.6 million to 8.2 million or 8.3 million. The next slide provides an overview of each option and provides projected fund balance to expense ratios at the bottom. As a reminder, Georgia law states that school districts shall maintain a fund balance to expense ratio between 8 and 25%. As slide 14 shows, the fund balance to expense ratio under the option to maintain the rate at 14.674 estimates that that ratio would fall below 8% in 2028, just 1 year away. Therefore, it is the recommendation of myself and the superintendent that we adopt a millage rate of at least 15.674%, 1 mil above the current rate. This recommendation does not come lightly, and it's a result of years of increased inflationary costs, including state health increases, TRS increases, and salary increases passed down from the state. In contrast, the district has continued to reduce or maintain millage rates insufficient to keep up with increasing costs over that same period of time. We've combated pressures over the past 3 years by scaling back our budgets, realigning class sizes, reducing staff, foregoing book adoptions, and exploring options that outsource employment to save benefit costs, all of which have direct impacts on teaching and learning and our operations. We must also assess that the risk of fluctuating state equalization grant is real. The district received the following amounts over the past 4 years. In 2024, it was $11.7 million. That increased approximately $10 million in 25. In 26, that decreased almost $10 million. And in 27, it increased again $10 million. At this point, we're going to have a hard time affording that decrease of $10 million again after this year. So we got to look at mitigating the risk of that fluctuating pattern. And that's just one line item of revenue. The next slide shows some assumptions that were used in slide 14 to get to this point. The main points are that we are expecting a decrease in enrollment. We still are seeing decline in enrollment, and I put in here a $2 million decrease in QBE revenue into 2028 and beyond. I've also added back that $4 million of textbook costs that we removed in 2027 to account for the need to replace those books in the next fiscal year. And we put a 2% inflationary factor on income and expenses moving through those years. There has been no assumption for rezoning and consolidation, which could definitely factor into future considerations. Looking at what the estimated cost to homeowners is, slide 16 illustrates that maintaining a rate of 14.674% would cost the average homeowner of a house in, well, let me back up. The average house value in Bibb County right now is $225,000 according to the tax assessor's office. Maintaining that rate for this value of a home with homestead exemption would be approximately $103.92 per year, or $8.66 per month. To increase 1 mil, that cost would be $186.92 a year, or $15.58 per month. And without those homestead exemptions, the price to these homeowners would be $112.68 under the maintaining option, or $9.39 per month. And to increase 1 mil would be approximately $202.68, or $16.89 per month. Looking at slide 17, we are shown a millage rate history of and taxes levied in the district. It also gives you on the right side what our student FTE count was back in 2013 through 26, and what that relative revenue per FTE equals. And you can see on this slide, and this is a 12, 13-year period of time. The definite one from 13 to 25, where that revenue per FTE is $1,278. Remember that number when we get to some later slides. Some considerations moving forward. Setting the millage rate and the budget is a primary function of the Board of Education. We can accomplish this by responding accordingly to cost increases, especially mandated increases from the state in areas of salary and benefit. I was asked a question in the previous meeting, what it would look like and what my recommendation would be on a proper fund balance. This came in light of the TAN that we're looking at tonight as well. And it's my recommendation with this expenditure load that we're at right now, that we would have our need around a $60 million fund balance. That provides approximately 75 days of cash on hand, is a 20% fund balance to expense ratio, which falls within the state guidelines, and gives us 2.5 months of free cash flow, which would greatly reduce the need for a TAN in the future. It would take some time to get there, even with this 1 mil option increase. We would only land around $47 million. So it would take some still work in the future to get to this $60 million fund balance. The next several slides show, get my piece of paper out here. The next several slides show comparative analysis around our surrounding counties. And it's important to look at these similarly sized school districts and just nearby school districts if they're not similarly sized. The first slide is an enrollment comparison between districts from Henry County, Paulding, Newton, and the following. Most of these are similarly sized as we are. And you can see most of these counties have a decline in enrollment. It's a trend we're seeing across the state. The next slide shows QBE revenue comparisons. It's important to note here that several factors go into this QBE calculation, including how much categorical grants each county gets and qualifies for, as well as their student population mix. So the higher special ed population, the higher EIP population, and general education population, those variables factor into how much per student each county receives. Next is a tax digest value comparison, where you can see that our tax digest value, while it's going up, this is only through 2025. Ours is on the lower end of these ranges, and some of these are more closer to the Atlanta area. Maybe they had a higher inflationary price, but we were sitting at 45% through 2025. Looking at taxes levied compared to other districts, you can see where Bibb County has levied, from 78.6 million all the way to 90.7 million if we were to maintain this rate. That's approximately a 15% increase when you can see comparative counties have gone up substantially more than we have. The last slide is a look at the increase in annual property tax revenue from 2020 to 2025. This is kind of combining those other slides into a little different data, where you can see that the overall increase over those 5-year period of time, Bibb County has gone up $12 million in property taxes. And if you look at these other districts like Chatham County, they've gone up $134 million per year in additional revenue. Even Houston County, $37 million more. Fayette is a smaller district than we are. They're getting $40 million more per year to operate from. If you look at that increase down per student, we've increased our millage rate $596 per student over this 5-year period of time. Remember, just a few slides ago, it was over 10 years, and it's only gone up $1,200. Look at that difference between the other counties and how they're responding to changes in inflationary pressures. The increase percentage is 15.3%, and at the far right, property tax levied per student, we are at the bottom. To wrap this up, this is a comparison of their revenue and how it's distributed over their state revenue versus their local revenue, and breaks that down per student as well. So in that middle kind of off-centered column is their student population, followed by their QBE revenue per student, tax revenue per student, and then finally a total revenue per student, where again, we're on the bottom of this list. Moving out into our midterm strategies, like I said, we don't take this 1 mil recommendation lightly. We continue to look at mid and long-term strategies, which include implementing our efficiency studies, which would be talked about later at this meeting, I believe. Launching an instructional efficiency study to look at potential cost savings throughout our instructional side of the house. And still, like, the revenue and expenditure and alignment, anticipate future unfunded mandates and align district expenses accordingly. Looking at our supplemental pay restructuring, reviewing and revising that supplemental pay structure across the district and standardize a process to compensate people evenly. And then lastly, the rezoning and redistricting options that we continue to explore over the past few years. That brings us to kind of the end of this. The next steps in this process will be that we will bring a recommendation for a tentative millage rate adoption in the next meeting, followed by scheduling 3 public hearings, which is required by law, and a final adoption, which would be held on September 9th after that final public hearing. After that, we would submit all documentation to the tax commissioner for approval, and he would send it to the state for approval. This is a calendar of events that we will follow to hold those meetings and get our millage rate adopted in time. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bush. Board members, any questions? Dr. Fickling, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Bush, for your presentation. On page 22, you list change in QBE revenue from 20 to 25, and for Bibb County you have $42,990,686. Is that saying that we've received that much more in QBE funds, or is that should be mine? I didn't understand that number.
That's the difference between the far left column and the far right, and the 2026 column. Yes, sir. So that's the change over those years.
So that means that we've gotten that much more.
Correct.
And I also noticed that in your comparison of Bibb County, we are compared with school systems that are really some of the top-notch schools and systems in the state. And I was wondering why we wouldn't be compared with someone who is doing basically what we are doing, and that is trying to get out of the levels that we're in into more student achievement levels and what have you. If we compare ourselves to the top performing school systems, then certainly we're going to be at the bottom. And I don't know whether this is a strategy to make us seem like we're doing so much worse, but why aren't we compared to Twiggs County and Jones County and around here? Now, Houston County is one of the top performing school systems in the whole state. I don't understand the rationale around comparing us to top performing school systems.
So I simply included our surrounding areas that touch our county.
So
And
what?
I included the counties that touch Bibb County. So
Jones County don't touch Bibb County.
well, I guess I could add that, but I would be happy to go back
Twiggs
and
County
add.
doesn't touch Bibb County. Peach County doesn't touch Bibb County.
So one
None
of
those
them.
counties are on here.
So one of those options, my main goal here was to look at like size counties and then add in some of
We
our
are not
competitors like
size
Houston
with
County.
Henry County.
Yeah, but the notion that we are presenting this information to skew an opinion is just false. We've simply put
I
this
didn't say
information on
that.
here as a comparison, and it's hard to put 159
I
counties
didn't
on a
say
single
that,
slide.
but that is a good way to look at it, to skew an opinion. And that's your words.
It's also yours.
Other questions?
If I may, another one of the reasons we utilize some of these counties is we're considered a large district based on our numbers, and looking at similar size counties is part of the help as it relates to doing a comparison. And point noted in terms of other surrounding counties, but we wanted to include a combination of our neighbors in addition to similar sized districts. Most districts are smaller than our district, and related to these others are smaller as well. So that's part of the rationale. However, your point is taken. If we feel like Peach, Twigs, Jones would help a better perspective. But this sample size is what we've utilized to objectively look at this matter and do some comparisons for discussion.
I beg to disagree. When comparisons are made, they're done in percentages, not in whole numbers. So we could compare ourselves with any other county based on percentages and not on the size of the county. Henry County is one of the largest counties in the state of Georgia as far as student population is concerned. To compare ourselves with that and looking at the numbers really is to skew an opinion.
Ms. Hanlon?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. First of all, I wanted to start with slide 7. Or excuse me, slide, yeah, I think it was 7. No, okay, slide 10. Slide 10, first of all, just, I think as Bibb County residents, we should give ourselves a hand that our tax digest has increased by 60% in 6 years. I mean, that's, you know, that says a lot about both the economy and our local economy. So that was one point I did want to bring out. Number 2, the blue total tax revenue line. While the tax digest increased 60%, our tax revenue increased 22%. And if you look at that line going across from 22 to 24, the amount of revenue basically remained the same. And that's because we did full rollbacks in those years. So for the 3 years after that, we've been tracking with the tax digest. And if you look at the bottom line, the CPI, the amount of total revenue basically is tracked with inflation. So we should be managing fairly accurately because we should be tracking to inflation, and our revenues are tracking to inflation, and our expenses should also be tracking to inflation. So that was number 1. Number 2 on slide 17. Here we are. The local revenues per FTE. So we had put out a chart, or we'd received a chart, I don't know, a couple of months ago, showing the amount of local revenue per student at various elementary schools across the district. And at the low end, it was about, with a larger number of students per school, it was around $3,000 per FTE. And at the higher end, it was over $6,000 per FTE. So if you're looking at 2026 and looking at 14.674, which would be holding it constant, $5,000 in local revenue per FTE should be, I mean, to me, we should be looking at our average cost and kind of tracking to that in terms of matching our revenues, our local revenues to our expenses. And then let's see. There was one other comment I had. And then basically, also on slide 17, over that time frame, we've had a 40% increase in local revenue per FTE. So we have been bringing revenue in, and we need to be managing our expense base to that revenue that we're bringing in. And those are the comments I had. Thank you.
I had an addendum to what she said.
Go ahead, Dr. Fickle.
Yes, I like the fact that she pointed out that we have a 60% increase in our tax digest. And I want to point out that one of the reasons that the tax digest increases is because of the rollback of the taxes, not only for the individual residents, but for the industry and business moving in to Bibb County, because they can really do a lot of things when they don't have to pay a lot in tax. And that's one of the main focuses of growing a community, is that you lower your tax base so that it would appeal to companies. And in the last 6 years, from 2019 to 2026, we've had several industries to move into Bibb County. We have several more that are planned to move in. And one of the key things to draw them in is a lower tax base. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Bush. I do want to first say thank you for including not just Houston County's property tax, but the Houston O-Lost. It gives us a much better option of comparing apples to apples in this. We're constantly talking about the fact that their rate doesn't match because of that O-Lost. So having those numbers included, I think, gives us a more accurate representation of how Houston County funds their school district compared with how we have to fund ours.
Sure.
I ask it all the time. I'm going to ask again. Are we doing anything as far as lobbying the legislature to try and get no lost in Bibb County for education?
Well, you know, that new, I can't remember was it House Bill 64 that passed? One of the ones passed this year where it gave the cities those rights. I don't know if we're doing that in-house in Bibb County. I would hope somebody on our behalf is, but that was one of the big sticking points, is that education all over the state was not afforded that right. Therefore, we couldn't reduce property taxes in our county, just like our city government is able to do.
Yeah.
So hopefully at some point in time, they'll be able to do that. But there are challenges with that. So like if it would be a great benefit for Bibb County, because we have a a medium residential, high commercial rate, and we have a lot of tourism.
Right.
But counties that don't have tourism or those sales tax dollars, it would be an hindrance to them. So there's definitely a balance to it.
Well, I hope that's something the legislature pays attention to. The other thing I wanted to point out is thank you for giving me the number on the fund balance. That I don't like the idea of having to spend money to make payroll when we should have money in the bank. And I like the idea of us. I mean, my goals are we need to have a balanced budget, and that means cutting expenses. That means doing what we have to on the tax side. But I don't like the idea of having to do a tax anticipation note if we can avoid it. And I appreciate you giving us at least an idea what the goal should be if that's what our desire is. And so thank you for giving us that.
Yep.
Other questions? I do have a couple things, Mr. Bush. Looking at 17, the student FTE 20,214. Was that our last number for last school year? Because I think we do the FTE October, March, something like that.
That's the one listed on our current QBE report. And I try to stay consistent with that. So that's what we're earning money on from our QBE. And that would have been our March student count.
What's our current student population?
It is, we've discussed this a couple of times. I would have to get somebody to pull that up.
I would be interested to know what that number, I'm not,
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not when we're doing the FTE count. That won't be till October. I kind of like to see, you know, here 3 weeks, roughly 3 weeks into school, where we are with that number.
We can get that. Yep.
So if I'm hearing correctly, not rolling back nets us roughly $8.3 million, something
Correct.
like that. And as I recall, during the budget presentations we had, when you took the increases in health insurance coverage, TRS, plus the literacy coaches, that was roughly about $8.1 million. Does that sound about right?
I would have, yeah, I think so.
Okay, I
Right
looked
off-
at your
right off the
slide,
top, I
it
hadn't
said
seen it.
8.090, so I'm glad I had a copy if you want to
Sure.
see that. Okay. Just one other sort of observation. Obviously, you all have made certain assumptions into the future about revenue and other things. The one thing that's not really estimated but mentioned is the impact of various efforts to right-size the system, to implement efficiencies and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
I know we do have some general numbers of what monies you save in the event you consolidate a school and other things. So those efforts also provide potential savings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
I would like to highlight something though that was on my mind earlier today.
Go ahead.
We look at our deficit right now, and it's 8.51 if we maintain. It's $16 million if we don't. And I want to put in context what $8.5 million is. an average employee, teacher, makes around $100,000 with benefits. That's 85 personnel. So to your point about closing schools, I think we can save around 20 people per school. So that's 20, 40, 60. That gets us 60 people, $6 million. We're still in a deficit if we maintain the millage rate and we close 3 schools. That's the challenge that we have to face at some point in time. That no action is action. You know, we brought forth considerations over and over again, but at some point in time we got to take action because we have a declining enrollment. But the counteraction to that is to give the district the money it needs to operate currently with the buildings we have in place right now, and that's our number. It's going to be really hard to keep cutting costs and keep cutting 90 people out of our operations because our schools are fully staffed right now. They're almost minimally staffed. So it's going to be hard to get that number out of expenditures. And that's kind of our argument and our plea here is that it's time to look at a revenue option.
Well, go ahead, and then I
And
have a comment.
if I may just add to that, the other part has to do with our current personnel. And as we look at neighboring districts and remaining competitive, one of the main ways we accomplish that is to keep up with pay. So a good part of our recommendation has to do with positioning us to be able to offer step increases, salary increases, modest raises as needed, because as we have personnel, we want to retain those personnel and not allow people to leave us for reasons that are circled around pay. So that's a significant part of this recommendation as we look forward, because we recognize that as it relates to the recommendation, we have to ask ourselves, where would those monies come from? And we can't cut ourselves enough to accommodate for the raises that I believe we would need in order to remain competitive over the next several years. Just wanted to add that piece. Thank you.
Let me acknowledge, Mr. Bush, I'm not going to claim that you can rezone and consolidate your way out of this deficit. But what I don't want to hear is we shouldn't do it because it's not going to make a difference. No savings is too small
I agree.
if it's appropriate. And so I want to get out of that mindset. I don't want to hear it's only saving this much or it's only saving that much.
I think my argument is the challenge is that we won't realize that savings, even if we make action this year to consolidate, we won't realize that savings until next year. And this is our budget right now. Like, we got to get through this year.
And
and
I'm
get the
not
savings.
having that I'm not arguing with you about
Sure,
that.
I'm
What
just
saying is, when you potentially are asking people for more tax money, you've got to show them what you're doing on your end to be as efficient as you can. And listen, I realize this process, I know this process has not moved as fast as I would like. Part of the issue has been the proposals that have come to us have been non-starters. And I think personally, part of the issue is when you target 1 or 2 schools, that's the wrong way to do it. You should turn it on its head and say, what's our goal? Well, we've got 9 underpopulated schools. We want to get close to 0 as we can.
Correct.
We've got buildings that have tremendous capacity that to me have been utilized. One is Skyview. And so we look at it, okay, what are the scenarios that get us as close to 0 as possible, and see where that data leads us rather than saying, okay, we do 1 or 2 here, what does it get us? Because the last proposal only got us to 6 underpopulated schools, down from 9. And so that process is going to be difficult. It's going to require time, and it's going to require explaining to the public why you're doing it and why it's going to be better. So yes, I understand that it's not going to have an immediate impact, but again, it's like the same argument, well, it only saves you this much. Well, it doesn't mean you don't do it, because you have to do it. So thank you for all the work you've done to get these numbers. It's very helpful. Any other, Mr. Freeman?
I noted that you put in here about the state law allows us to have a fund balance. I think you'd said between 8 and 25%. Is that right? Under current law?
Yeah, the new one that passed this
Right.
year. Yeah.
That passed this year, right?
Yes, sir.
But am I correct that the previous law, there was a problem if our effective fund balance, I have for some reason in my head the number 13 or 14%.
The maximum was 15 and the minimum 8, but it was really difficult for even some districts to maintain under. Some districts have a lot of wealth, so it was hard for them to remain at that 15%, and it really doesn't give you operating capital in a situation like we may be in this year, where, and a lot of counties are, where tax bills are going to be coming in late, and we may not be getting where we usually get tax revenue in October and November. we may not get that revenue until the middle of December.
So,
And so it had, that's what they were doing, is building time to.
so the previous law was 8 to 15% fund balance. The legislature recognized that wasn't enough and
went up.
expanded it 8 to 25,
Yeah,
right?
correct, yeah.
And we're looking at a fund balance below that, right?
Yeah,
I think I'm confusing two things. There's the fund balance amount, and then wasn't there a previous law about getting your millage rate below 13%? Is that still?
I'm not familiar
There-
with
there
that
was
one.
an issue
The
where we
most
had
the millage
before.
rate in Georgia allows is 20 mills per school district. Some are
Okay.
grandfathered in a little more than that, but the blanket is 20%, 20 mills.
I thought we had a concern a few years back about your effective, maybe it affected QBE funding if you got below a certain millage rate. That could be a concern. Am I correct in that those two are tied together?
Well, QBE removes what they call a local 5 mil share, where they require each school district to contribute 5 mils. So they have a bar at 5 mils. And you'll see that on our QBE reconciliation sheet. So they give you a gross amount, calculate what an effective mill in Bibb County or over the state is through that equalization process, and reduce your income by that 5 mil share.
Okay.
And that's what they expect a district to contribute at a minimum. But that law was written also in 1984 or 6. So we've been operating off that since then.
Okay. But the new law has to do with your fund balance, not millage rate.
It's solely that fund balance to expenditure ratio that we see on the bottom part of that graph.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, board members? All right, thank you. Next, we have a presentation regarding a corrective action plan.
Good afternoon and welcome again. As you are aware, we were designated as a moderate risk district by the Department of Education and the Department of Audits. This was handed down to us because we had,
Excuse me, Mr. Bush, just real quick, board members, he's referring to
I'm sorry,
the document action memorandum subject moderate risk designation overview. It should be right behind your millage rate documents. It's called moderate risk designation overview.
should be like a 2-page document. All right, thank you. So the overview is just to present 4 major categories that will involve superintendent, CFO, and board involvement. So we'll get down to that. So we were handed down this designation because we had 4 audit findings. We had an audit finding each year for 2 consecutive years. However, I want to reiterate those audit findings were based on transactions that happened in our ledger that the auditor found that were corrected. But since that repetitive nature of that one of those on our statement of federal expenditures happened 2 years in a row, they put it in the ACFR to acknowledge that we need some strength there. So this corrective action plan is the state's way of saying, to notify the board that those things exist and that we're going to put a corrective action plan in place to address them. I also want to say in that audit that there was no, we were given a clean audit, a clean bill of health. We have a healthy financial situation still, and we have very strong controls in place to catch things like this. These are just a couple items that got hit. So we'll get started on the overview. This does subject us to Department of Audit interjection. So what that could mean is that if they see this finding again, or they see something that's not right, they can notify the district and come and do an audit themselves, or they can ask for a specific audit on certain items I don't see that happening right now. What they've done this year is given us a 1-year waiver to have an external audit, because part of this bill also says that if this happens over and over, the Department of Audits is going to come in and do our audits instead of letting us hire an external auditor. But they did give us a waiver on that for 1 year. The second piece of this is that the corrective action plan that we'll review tonight is due on August 28th, 2026, 60 days after the notice, after we were given notice of this designation. And two other sections in here, a monthly board reporting, which gives you an estimated expenditure list. That will be reported in the main board meeting. We're going to create an FSS2 section that specifically is a placeholder for the moderate risk designation updates each month. So in that, you will have any requirements that we need from the board, any information we need to communicate with you, and any updates regarding this process. So one of those is a monthly expenditure report. It's basically guided to give you an overview of how many dollars are going out of the district each month. It's not geared toward just general fund. It is a blanket of all of our funds. That's what the state wants to know. They don't want it isolated to one thing. The second and last piece on here is a public notice. We will be required to put in the paper a report of our financial condition, our financial results for the year end FY26 by September 30th. So what we'll do is between now and the time necessary to complete that task, we'll bring that toward the board for approval. It'll be part of the minutes. You'll have to sign it, and then we'll publish it in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks, much like we do our public hearings for the budget and for the upcoming millage rate adoption. So that kind of concludes my overview. I will move into the corrective action plan itself. This is going to be the document that we'll review, and I will need your signature on so we can submit it to the state by the 28th. It should be. It should.
Yes, it's FSS 2.2.
Yeah, and it should have action on corrective plan with an action on it. What I plan on doing in this presentation is just going through what these audit findings were individually and what we're doing as a corrective action to mitigate them. So I want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. The first is the action memo that I'll read and for your acceptance at the next board meeting at 4 o'clock. And I'm going to move straight down to this finding number 25.01. It should be on page 2 toward the bottom. This finding reported that the district did not properly adjust receivables related to and related balances as of 6/30/25. So this was in the prior year. The necessary corrections also affected the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which required adjustments of $195,562 in accounts receivables, decreased revenue of $769,101, and increased unavailable revenue of $573,000. What this says in a nutshell is that we didn't receive $573,000 that we earned in FY25. We didn't receive it until 26. And our accounting department booked it in the 25 period in the wrong period. So all that is doing is moving that $573,000 from 2025 to 2026. The corrective action steps to mitigate these problems, and we have controls in place already, but specifically in this area, we wanted to develop and maintain a year-end receivable reconciliation. We call this a split sheet, showing how different grant timing periods come in, so we can capture the differences in a 2025 grant and a 2026 grant. Specifically, this is important because grants run 15 months, so they run through each fiscal year. So that split sheet helps us isolate those values. It also requires support and documentation for material receivable balances from each month from the appropriate people. We put in place a reconciliation to reconcile federal receivables and expenditures to the grant records before we create our CFA for final submission. we require secondary supervision of each one of these processes. So there's a second set of eyes to see in a review process to catch any errors or any potential mistakes. And we provided heavily targeted training to those individuals responsible for this from outside people, including Godot's financial department, our auditors, and internal accounting personnel to make sure everybody has a clear understanding of these processes. Part of this corrective action plan is to name responsible parties, give a timeline and evidence of completion, which are all listed in this box below. Finding number 2025-002 was a similar condition as the one before, but this was a timing issue of when we received our Chromebooks. In addition, there's two very small amounts in the student activity accounts of $30,000 and $8,000 that were reclassified into the proper year because those goods were received in, I believe, in 2025 and they were recorded in 2026. So it was a movement back. The Chromebooks was where we had been billed for those. We received the Chromebooks in 2025 in-house. We recorded that transaction in 2025, but the due date of the lease was in 2026, and the auditors wanted us to move that payment, and we had a finding for that. So to correct these going forward, we already have some of this in action, but that corrective action on the top is to establish a formal year-end cutoff procedure for goods received and services performed before June 30th. And what that means is we have a lot of activity coming in and out of here. So anything that drops in our floors before June 30th should be a previous year expense. Even though we may get that invoice in July or August to pay it, it still should be an expense in the previous year. So we have a good process in place and with all our departments to maintain good working order for those. And we try to get all of our goods and services well before that timeline. We cut off our ordering in March and it designed to get all of our products delivered by June 30th. So they're in that year. We also review material outstanding purchase orders and invoices, contracts, construction activity, and subsequent payments to identify obligations attributable to fiscal year obligations. Reconcile accounts payable and accounts liabilities each month and demand detailed support and schedules. Coordinate with procurement, capital programs, facilities, nutrition, and all these departments with big expenditures and big receivables coming in. We coordinate with them every month to make sure we know what they're procuring and when they're expecting to get those products, so we know they're in the right fiscal year. They're received in the right fiscal year and they're recorded in the right fiscal year. And then again, we require supervisory review and a documented approval of materials at year end, so we can record our accruals and reversals correctly. And lastly, include accounts payable and accrued liability testing in the year-end closing process, so we can try to catch anything that may have that may be right there at the line. And again, the responsible parties, timeline, and completion of evidence is listed here. 2025-003 dealt with capitalizing assets. We have a tremendous amount of capital assets in our district, but in these few cases, food service required a fund adjustment of $108,000, increased depreciation expense of $505,000, decreased expenses by $118,000, and an accumulated appreciation adjustment of $495,000. The correction action here is to review capital expenditures throughout the year as part of the year and as part of the year end close. Reconcile capital asset additions to the general ledger each month. Analyze purchasing records, construction records, and applicable department records to identify capital assets that are coming through. Require departments with significant capital purchases to identify assets acquired and which are placed in service during the year. Review expenditures near the district's capitalization threshold, which is $10,000, and reconcile additions, disposals, accumulated depreciation, and depreciation expense before financial statements are finalized. And lastly, we set a review process for this in place too, so the individuals recording fixed assets have an additional set of eyes to look at that before they're finalized. Those responsible parties are vast and listed here. The timeline is this year, 6/30, just like the other ones. And the evidence of completion is documented as well. The last finding, 25004, dealt with a technical classification of our dependent and flexible spending accounts, where we had them determined as a custodial fund versus a general fund item. That was a one-time fix. We don't anticipate that happening again, and because we don't have any other funds that would generate this type of classification. In case we do encounter those funds with that kind of classification, we put in place a monthly checklist that looks for this. If somebody's setting up a new fund, they would have to check off, is this a custodial or a general fund classification? And just continue to review other funds to make sure those don't exist. And we would also incorporate a fund classification into that annual review process, and document the basis for significant fund classification determinations if one comes up, and consult applicable government accounting standard board guidance for technical resources if something does to happen. The responsible parties are myself and my accounting department. Timelines, like I mentioned, this one has already been corrected. We don't anticipate this would not be a problem this year. And then the evidence is that we reclassified that transaction, those accounts. Lastly, they have ongoing monitoring and accountability. We'll continue in-house through myself and to maintain this corrective action monitoring checklist. Ms. Colbus told me today they're putting together some guidance with interpreting this law as well, because it is ever developing. Even the Department of Audits is communicating to us daily, even as of last Friday, giving us examples of what this monthly schedule may look like, giving us interpretations of what it means. So we are working with this fluidly to make sure all of these accountability measures are met and are satisfied appropriately. And I believe that ends my overview of that correction action plan.
Thank you. I think we got about 5 minutes. Any questions, board members? Dr. Ficklin.
Thank you so much. As I said on last year, when I look at numbers, and thank you again, Mr. Bush, for coming up with this corrective action plan. But when I look at numbers, I always have to take them with a grain of salt. Because one of the things that you said that we had a clean bill of health in our audit. That cannot be true when the auditors identified material weaknesses. So that statement in and of itself to me is out the window. When a material weakness is identified, the auditors are saying that there is something that's not going right. And that's what they are saying. And auditors don't look at everything. They pull out certain kinds of things to look at. Now, if there is a material weakness identified by the auditors, then if they were to look at, if the Department of Audits come and look at it, they're going to look at everything. But these auditors that we hire, they look at just certain kinds of things. And we have a good auditor. I think that she was very kind to the system the last time she was here. But now we're getting these kinds of situations. And I went back and looked at December 2025, where all the things that we are saying that's going to be corrective plans and how we're going to going forward. You certified last year that these things were looked at over and over again, and they had certain levels that these kinds of material weaknesses would not, appear. But yet and still, we still have them happening. Just the document that was given to us that we're supposed to sign, and I know we're supposed to sign this one too, but I am hard pressed to sign a document that I got just today. And I'm wondering what was going on. Didn't somebody know we were coming to this meeting? And why are we just now getting some of these things that we're going to have to make a vital decision on? It's been 30 days since the last meeting. And we are just getting a whole lot of stuff today, all these green sheets and things, and then things being changed in here. Those kind of things, board, concern me. When we operate like that, it seems like that it's a haphazardly done thing, and that maybe they start working on it this morning. And I know that's a little bit of being hyperbole in my thinking, but it seems that way. We have had 3 different documents given to us that we're supposed to sign off as being the spending that's coming up, and all 3 of them were different. So I'm wondering which one is the real one. Numbers were not added up correctly. One of them had a column that ended in $11 million, and the next column ended in $12 million, and the total was $22 million. I said, every 3rd grader knows that 1 and 2 is 3. So I wonder about these kinds of things happening. And my question, and of course, we looked at the, we said I'm wondering about, in this audit, did the auditors look at, this is my question, and those other were just some comments, some frustrating comments that I made. But as we look at this particular audit, where is it in here about the snafu that was pointed out to us in December 2025, the day after we had just met and we had been certified that everything was looked at so many times we couldn't make a mistake? Is that pointed out in this audit anywhere?
So that audit was based on the 2025 results that ended June 30th, 2025. That was well in advance of the December budget amendment that you're referring to, I believe. So it wouldn't have any of those items in there. The current audit that they're doing right now would notate that if necessary.
So then, so we are to notice some other material weaknesses coming forward, because that certainly was a material weakness. Thank you.
Okay, board members, it's 3:58. We'll have the opportunity to ask questions about this item during our committee meeting unless we have one right. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give it to you. Go ahead, Ms. Handler.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just had 2 questions. Thank you for putting together the plan and denoting what all of the steps look like. I guess I have a question. Do you have a format for the monthly reporting yet? Do you know what that is going to look like?
So it would look like what we provided you. The monthly expenditure format is what you've been provided.
Okay,
So-
but yeah, but that doesn't talk about the change in the plan or what things are.
So the plan is a one-time document. Once it's approved, it's submitted to the state as part of the requirements. The requirement for the monthly update is just the expenditure report.
So as a board member, I would want to know more than that. I would want to know the progress of the plan.
Okay. So our audit is a snapshot in time. Our
Right.
auditors are being on site for about a month, and they're looking for that month, and their results come from that period of time. So what can we provide you to make you satisfied that would give you comfort to know that the plan is being executed?
That's a good question. That's why I was asking what the monthly reporting would consist of, because board reporting is part of the plan.
So the monthly item on the board meeting was really designed for anything upcoming that's due. So the monthly expenditure reports that are required each month, and like next month, we'll have to give you the financial statements that we're going to publish in the paper that mentioned. So anything forthcoming that we need to update you on, it would be a standing item. But
Okay.
we would be happy to entertain what would please the board in response to what that looks like. It would be our normal daily operations is what it would be, and our monthly reconciliation checklist process.
That would be a good start.
It would be a lot of information because we have a lot of departments and schools going through requisition process, approval processes, all of which is tested through our audit. But it depends on how much volume of documents you would want.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of quick things.
Sure.
Did the state notify us in writing that we've been placed on this moderate risk status?
They did.
They did.
The department, yes,
Can you
Department of Audit.
provide the board members with a copy of that,
Absolutely.
please? All right. 2, did the auditor assist in the development of the corrective action plan?
No, but we did review this directly with Department of Audits. And sent it to them to review, had feedback with them, and they just seemed to say that it was adequate in their mind.
Any other questions right now, board members?
But our auditors have, Ms. Pendergrass did review it as well. And it really had limited comments about it.
Yeah, Just
Go ahead,
one,
Dr.
Mr.
Bickler, real
President. On the list that we're supposed to be signing on the monthly report, that, Board Member, Hanlon referred to, have you all decided how much the, security and the police were going to be paid? That's never on there.
That security line is a grant. It's going to be zero until we expend that money and usually through a 1 or 2 time purchases a year. And a good example is we spent that money, it's designated $50,000 per school from the state. They gave us a specific function for that grant. So that's why it's blank this month. It's not for campus security.
An
or anything like that.
asterisk with the, explanation at the bottom of the page would have helped me as a board member.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else? All right. It's 4:02 PM. We've reached the end of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion by Mr. Hester, second by Dr. Woodford. Questions? There being none, all in favor of the motion, let it be none by the word aye. Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no. There is none. The committee, this call board meeting is adjourned.